Thanks everyone for being here. Once again, my name is Jisung Park. I am an environmental and labor economist, and today I'd like to share with you some perspectives on a potential determinant of climate risk, which may not be particularly salient, but which may be economically important. Okay, so according to a recent survey, the vast majority of CEOs and CFOs report that their firms may not be fully prepared for the adverse financial consequences of climate change. And in particular, as you can see, floods, droughts, and wildfires are listed as the three climate hazards that concern their companies the most. So what I'm going to try to suggest in today's talk is that hotter temperature may deserve a higher place on that list. Indeed, there's growing evidentiary support for this idea that heat may affect economic processes in subtle, but maybe far more pervasive ways than might first meet the eye. So to give you an example, in an ongoing project where my colleagues and I are using many millions of data points from workers' compensation claims in California and elsewhere, and I like how Luke put it, skipping over a lot of hard work and dirty details, we find that hotter temperature significantly increases the risk of workplace injury. And again, happy to talk about the details of the methods, but in short, we're using quasi-experimental day-to-day variation in temperature on a work site within a given zip code and month to try to get at the causal effect of temperature on injury risk. And I think it's important to note a few facts. One is that despite the sort of mainstream media coverage and its focus on triple-digit killer heat waves, the bulk of the damage actually appears to come from more mundane but more numerous heat events, days with highs in the 80s and 90s, for instance. Right? A second fact that emerges is that while yes, some of these incidents are due to obviously heat-related and officially reported heat illnesses, actually the vast majority appear to come from a wide range of other accidents, things like falling off of a ladder, getting hit by a moving vehicle, getting your hand caught in a machine. And because the base, the total number of these latter kinds of incidents is much larger to begin with, we actually find that they are a much bigger share of the total societal costs. In fact, there's good reason to believe, based on other studies, that these kinds of workplace injuries are not only damaging for workers and their families, but to firms and society at large, right? Given what we know about the effects of workplace injury on medical utilization, healthcare utilization, right? On work stoppages, recruitment and retention costs, et cetera. According to our preliminary estimate, in California alone, hotter temperature may be causing upwards of $500 million worth of societal damages due to its effects on workplace accidents and injuries. So these findings are consistent with a rapidly growing literature, which finds, among other things, that hotter temperature, especially in developing economies, can significantly reduce labor productivity and manufacturing output. And moreover, according to some recent studies, that you can actually trace out the ripple effects of heat events in places like India and China through international supply chains to downstream firms, even in rich developed economies like the United States. So just take a step back. This is a rapidly evolving, exciting research space. My read of the literature is that it's a space in which there are far more questions than answers, which, if you think about it, is kind of a risk and an opportunity, right? The risk, I hope, is somewhat apparent based on what I've just presented. But the opportunity, I think, is that with the right combination of data and social science, we may begin to identify the best practices and policies that might help protect or insulate our organizations and economies from the effects of hotter temperature, right? To dampen the link between heat and economic outcomes. And here, I just want to conclude with this final thought. I would argue that the role of social sciences is vital in this inquiry, and that speaks to the importance of all of you being here. And this is a plug for engaging in work and research in this space. Look, technology is super important. Physical sciences, obviously necessary. But the social sciences here, I would argue, are essential. And the reason for that is sort of captured in the following intuition. It's the idea that the mapping between any given climate hazard, any given physical hazard, and realized human suffering or flourishing is most often a complex function of the institutional and economic environment in which that climate hazard manifests, right? Which means to me that there's a lot of urgency in asking such questions as what kinds of climate adaptations are most effective, right? What affects the rate of adoption and diffusion, and why? Not only for the very salient natural disasters, but also for the less salient climate impacts, such as hotter temperature. Thank you.